Today, we take a look back at the odd relationship between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts in the MCU. Stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is DJ, and Tony Stark has become one of the most iconic Marvel characters in history through his time in the MCU. This smooth-talking, intelligent billionaire has fully cemented his legacy through his time as Iron Man. He's saved New York City from nuclear destruction, he's conquered time travel, and he's even sacrificed himself to save the entire universe from the might of Thanos. However, if you were to read any comic featuring Tony Stark, then you might find that he's pretty different on page. And one major difference actually comes through his different relationships with all the different women in the Marvel Universe. Since, in the comics, he's much more of a man-slut than in the MCU. In the comics, Tony has slept with almost every single woman you can think of, from Black Widow to She-Hulk, hell to even Gamora. Of course, he's also found himself sleeping with the woman who would soon become his wife in the MCU, Pepper Potts. However, funnily enough, that marriage is actually an invention of the movies, with Pepper Potts in the comics going on to marry Happy Hogan of all people. So without anything for the MCU to really base this romance off of, the folks over at Marvel Studios have actually had to tell this decade-long story completely from scratch. Which, I mean, it does make sense as to why they chose to do this. It's more relatable for an audience to see their main hero more as a family man rather than seeing him as a pompous, rich, billionaire lady killer like we see him in the comics. But without any real source material to base this story off of, you could say that the treatment of this relationship has been hit or miss to say the least. When building up an entire universe such as this, sometimes the folks over at Marvel have to pick and choose how and when to further these stories. You have to be very careful with things like this, and it was probably easy for them to focus more on their continuously expanding superhero lineup rather than the love story between these two characters. There are just so many weirdly missed opportunities for this couple on screen, to the point where we actually miss a lot of their relationship. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that this is a bad romance by any means, just a weird one from an audience standpoint, both in terms of the relationship between the characters and their relationship with us, the audience. So today, I want to take a look back at the romantic tale between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. I want to see if this relationship was indeed a success as people say, or if it was secretly a mess from the beginning. So why don't we jump back to the beginning of both their relationship and the MCU as a whole with Iron Man 1. After Tony goes on his little vacation into the desert, he returns home to his lovely assistants in Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, as well as his partner and soon-to-be enemy, Obadiah Stane. And in this huge return from beyond the grave, Pepper is completely taken aback as she starts to care and feel sympathy for her boss. So much so that as Tony starts his journey as Iron Man, Pepper leaves her position with him so that she doesn't feel responsible for his death. She already had to live through his death once, and she just didn't want to be involved in his death again. Of course, like we will see a few times throughout this story, Pepper eventually does come back and they continue to have a slightly flirtatious relationship. Sure, Iron Man 1 didn't have that much to show for their relationship, but it does sow these seeds in the background for their eventual romance in the future. The pattern of their relationship is established in this movie. Pepper loves and cares for Tony, but she is scared of Tony's self-destruction. And this dynamic would continue, of course, as Tony would continue his pursuit as a hero. However, most of Pepper's stress is bizarrely not seen by the audience, but rather it plays out in the background of the MCU. And this is actually a common theme that we see throughout the course of their relationship, as most of it seems to take place off-screen. Sure, we get some scenes of them together, but there are major events that happen in the timeline of this romance that we as an audience just never see. Things like Tony's marriage proposal, their eventual wedding, and well, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, since they aren't even a proper couple yet in our timeline. But that does change with Iron Man 2. Following the introduction of Black Widow as an undercover partner for Tony, Pepper is made CEO of Stark Industries. However, almost immediately after, Tony goes to war once again as he battles Whiplash and Justin Hammer. Following the disastrous Expo event that featured Whiplash's final attack on Tony, and following the stress of this conflict, Pepper goes to resign from her position as CEO of Stark Industries. However, Tony quickly changed her mind again following a kiss that she gladly reciprocated. And with that kiss, the two officially start their journey as a couple in the MCU, which we can see in the Avengers movie as they start rebuilding Stark Tower into the upcoming Avengers Tower at the end of the movie. However, the events of that film would continue to linger on through their entire relationship. While nothing necessarily progressed between Tony and Pepper in the Avengers film, they are still heavily affected by the massive alien army that ravaged New York. So much so that Iron Man 3 is essentially all about their reaction to those events. And that reaction does actually cause a bit of tension between Tony and Pepper throughout the movie. Pepper shows that she is deeply concerned about Tony throughout the movie, with him continuously showing signs of PTSD, to the point that he actually calls over one of his Iron Man suits in his sleep and almost harms Pepper due to his own fear. Not only that, but Tony's PTSD and out-of-control mindset actually continues to damage Pepper herself as he continues to challenge the Mandarin threat that is terrorizing America. Which, I mean, Tony, hear me out. Maybe inviting terrorists to attack your home might have been a bit of a bad idea. Just a little bit. Especially considering how you keep telling Pepper not to leave the house after actively inviting terrorists to attack your house! I get that we love Tony Stark now, but is no one gonna question that shit? Either way though, the Mandarin group does eventually attack Tony Stark at his house while Pepper is still inside. But thankfully they both end up escaping the situation completely unscathed. Separated, but unscathed. However, during the final battle between Iron Man and this self-proclaimed leader of this group, Aldrich Killian, disaster struck. Pepper had been transformed by Killian into having these weird dragon fire power things that all the members of the Mandarin seemingly have in this movie. So, Pepper dies for like 2 minutes before coming back and helping Tony to kill Aldrich Killian. Pepper returns and Tony's sudden heartbreak becomes a moment of clarity. In order to help protect her, Tony decides to destroy all of his Iron Man suits in a gesture stating that he is done obsessing over being a hero. And this gesture also goes to show that he is done worrying about that battle in New York and he is finally getting over his PTSD. He later gives her a necklace made from the shrapnel that was lodged in his heart during the events of Iron Man 1. And Tony uses his resources to help cure her of those weird dragon powers I mentioned earlier. You know, the powers of dragging these balls across your face! But now we move on to one of Tony's biggest regrets in the MCU, his creation of Ultron. Sure, nothing really happens between Tony and Pepper in the Age of Ultron film, but I think this is one of those moments that affected their relationship off-screen. Especially because we don't really see Pepper on screen until Spider-Man Homecoming, and even then, it's for less than 5 minutes in total. She's usually explained away as being too busy with Stark Industries to appear, but there are definitely some developments happening off screen. And we can see these events are indeed developing during Tony's time in Captain America Civil War. Near the beginning of the movie, we can see Tony giving a speech at MIT before suddenly freezing when he sees Pepper's name on the teleprompter. For once, Tony is actually taken aback at the mere mention of Pepper's name. So clearly, just the sight of her name gives him a very powerful emotional response. Later on, Tony is confronted with this emotion when talking to Steve Rogers. Tony explains that the lovely couple are taking a break, with Pepper unable to deal with the constant stress of Tony's insane superhero lifestyle. But bizarrely, despite this moment where it seems like the two are on rocky ground, the next big thing we see coming from this couple actually happens in Spider-Man Homecoming when Tony proposes to her. At the end of Homecoming, Tony is handed a ring by Happy after gathering the press for a big announcement. The announcement was originally going to be Spider-Man's introduction into the Avengers, but that turned into Tony last second proposing to Pepper Potts on stage and yet again off-screen. So off-screen, they both broke up and got engaged with seemingly no real explanation. Like I said, this relationship is kinda weird. But now we start to wind down on the relationship as we head into Infinity War and Endgame. Near the beginning of Infinity War, we can see Tony and Pepper enjoying each other's company as they talk about potentially having a baby. So, despite the friction between these two over their relationship, it does seem like they plan to stay together as they build up a family in their minds. Of course, this lovely thought gets interrupted as the fate of the universe rests in Tony's hands. He leaves Earth hunting for Thanos on Titan before the big snap heard around the universe. By the end of the movie, Tony and Pepper are worlds apart, and all hope is seemingly lost. And even though we had a pretty somber ending at the end of Infinity War, the worst is yet to come for this powerhouse of a couple. But before we get to that, the positives! Following Infinity War, there is a 5-year gap that takes place, and during that time, Tony and Pepper make some pretty big moves. After his devastating loss to Thanos, and after his subsequent return to Earth, Tony uses the rest of his life to live a bit more secluded lifestyle. He gets a nice big wooden house on the lake, he spends quiet time with Pepper, and they even start their journey as parents to a little girl named Morgan. However, pretty soon after this, Tony Stark would have to trade his life of love and luxury for the lives of trillions. Yes, as we all know now, Tony Stark would once again battle Thanos in a time-traveling war for some big glowing rocks. The red one, the yellow one, the rock one, the heavy metal one, all the rocks in the universe. And during this extremely intense fight alongside his fellow Avengers, Tony would do something that would turn him into an icon of the big screen. The man who started the Infinity Saga would use his last breath to end it, snapping away the rest of Thanos' army. However, the sheer power of the Infinity Stones were so powerful that his body just couldn't take it. After snapping away this army of monsters, Tony's arm would turn into beef jerky and he would die in the arms of Pepper. In one defining moment, he would prove just how much of a hero he had become. From the guy running a weapons company unknowingly killing innocent people with that same company's technology, to a man saving the entire universe, Tony Stark has proved to everyone that he is a hero you could aspire to become. And who stuck by him throughout the entire transformation? Pepper Potts. Sure, it wasn't necessarily something taken from the comics, but this relationship in the MCU has proven to be rather effective. I think that without Pepper, Tony's transformation into this hero would feel a lot less natural. Usually he's depicted as this uber genius billionaire without any sort of direction outside of his company and his suits. But with Pepper, Tony not only has someone to bounce off of, but someone that he can change for. And Tony isn't the only one made more interesting through this relationship, as Pepper's journey throughout the MCU has also been pretty fascinating to witness. From secretary to a top-level CEO to a mother and a wife, Pepper shouldn't be overlooked in this. Obviously, Tony is the star as he flies around in his yellow and red suit, but Pepper has proven to be rather important to Tony. The whole world looks at Tony as an inspiration, while he has to look at only one woman for this. Has it been a rocky road for them? Absolutely, but every relationship has its ups and downs, and in the MCU, no other relationship will ever have quite the same impact as the decade-long journey between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. Thank you all so much for watching this video. What do you guys think of this on-again, off-again relationship between these two iron-hearted characters? And is there another couple in the MCU that's actually better than them? Personally, I think Steve and Peggy are a better couple, but that's just me. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But until next time, have a good day. Bye-bye.